Codependence Anonymous, Chapter 5, page 97, Commonly Asked Questions. Beginning recovery in CODA can seem confusing at times. We ask questions, and sometimes the answers bring up more questions. CODA's fellowship is comprised of a wide variety of people who have gained valuable experience through their lives. This chapter is a collection of our questions and answers over the years. We've found it helpful to refer to these questions and answers throughout our recovery, not only in the early stages, but as a useful reminder as we walk our recovery road. We're not suggesting that the following paragraphs contain all the questions about recovery raised by the CODA Fellowship, or that those answers are definitive. However, it's helpful to discuss these topics in meetings or with our sponsor and friends. By doing this, we can hear a wider variety of experience, strength, and hope from our fellowship and generate more discussion. As we evolve and grow, our questions and answers will change too. This chapter, therefore, represents part of the experience, strength, and hope of the Fellowship of CODA. It is important to remember that the Fellowship of CODA is not attempting to provide professional or therapeutic help. We're simply offering our understanding of how we've applied these ideas and concepts to our recovery programs. Why do I need meetings? The CODA pamphlet, Attending Meetings, describes the building blocks of recovery meetings, working the steps, sponsorship, and service. It also lists how we gain the most benefit from attending CODA meetings, speaking, sharing, and listening. Meetings are where we hear the experience, strength, and hope of other recovering codependents. We learn to join the camaraderie of people supporting each other in healing. We learn to listen and experience being heard. We find out others have worked the 12 steps and how the 12 traditions have influenced their lives. We learn about ourselves and our relationships with others by hearing other people share about growth and change. We can be present, loving, and supportive of ourselves and each other in healthy and fulfilling ways. As we attend meetings and apply what we learn to our daily lives, we become more loving, caring, accountable, and responsible. Most importantly, meetings remind us from where we've come and how far we've grown. They provide us with a continuous support network throughout our recovery process. How long do I need to go to CODA meetings? Many of us believe we may need to attend CODA meetings the rest of our lives. Others disagree. It's a personal choice and one that requires contemplation. Our decision may vary from year to year as our recovery programs progresses, and no matter how long we're in recovery, we may experience episodes of codependence, although they're not usually as strong as or long-lasting as in our earlier recovery. Whether or not we choose to attend meetings for the rest of our lives, we believe CODA always will be there for us. What is a CODA birthday? A CODA birthday is the annual acknowledgement and personal celebration by each of us of the day we started our codependence recovery within the CODA program. This birthday can represent our first CODA meeting or the day we first called ourselves a codependent. Members at our CODA meetings often recognize people celebrating birthdays and present them with a medallion for the number of years they've been part of CODA. When they do, we recognize that it's a special time for all of us. We can congratulate each other and acknowledge our continued commitment and effort to gain personal recovery and happiness. What are sponsors? Sponsors are people within the CODA program who help guide us through the 12-step recovery process. These people are recovering codependents whose personal recovery is their first priority. They continue to learn how to live happy and fulfilling lives and are willing to share their experience, strength, and hope with us. They've usually walked the road of recovery longer than we have. They're who we call for help when we're confused or overwhelmed. They can also be friends who work this program with us. Sponsors are able to remain objective and detached from feeling responsible for our happiness and recovery. They also refrain from behaving in abusive, critical, or controlling ways that can result in fixing, rescuing, acting as therapists, sexual manipulation, or personal gain. Sponsors are role models for recovery, sources of loving support, and respectful of our anonymity and individual pace in working the program. More information about sponsors can be found in available CODA literature. How do I find a sponsor? The CODA pamphlet, Sponsorship in CODA, lists some suggestions for finding a sponsor when there are few old-timers within our fellowship. New CODA groups usually have members with long histories in other 12-step programs, both in members and as sponsors. While they may not have experience with CODA's application of the steps, they do understand what it means to work the steps in daily life. Such a person may be a candidate to sponsor you. There is a form of sponsorship arising out of this kind of situation called co-sponsorship. If you choose this method, you and another CODA member will sponsor each other. You can meet regularly to share what you are learning about the steps from others and from reading CODA literature. As you discuss various aspects of the program, you may become aware that each of you has some answers within. Some CODA members have started sponsorship groups which meet weekly or bi-weekly. This group consists of people who make a commitment to work on the 12 steps together. Discussion is focused on applying the steps to specific issues that are related to recovery from codependence. Do I have to believe in God to recover? Codependence involves a spiritual dilemma, meaning that we've made people our higher power, just as alcoholics make alcohol their higher power for their sense of well-being. Anything to which we give our power and well-being can become our God. We find this to be true whether we've experienced a belief in a higher power or not. Many of us find that recovering from codependence means believing in a power greater than ourselves, another person, behavior, addiction, place, or thing. Some of us try to recover without this belief, but fall short. Through our faith, trust, and belief in a higher power, we're able to experience a rich and rewarding recovery from codependence. As we attend meetings and listen to CODA members describe their recovery, we hear them talk about a relationship with a higher power and notice that those who maintain a regular connection with this power experience the recovery we seek. The form of this higher power is ours to discover, whether it be unconditional love, divine intelligence, God, nature, music, an image of an ocean, river, or tree, or our own CODA home group. Above all, it's important that we become willing to entertain the possibility there is something that can do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. What is the purpose of prayer and meditation? Since so much of codependence is tied into our spiritual dilemma, we find that consistently praying and meditating in whatever form that works for us improves our conscious contact with our higher power and helps keep us on our recovery journey. We can allow fear, projection, blame, and shame to overpower our relationship with our higher power if we don't include some type of prayer, meditation, or contact in our daily routine. Through prayer and meditation, we can experience a sense of peace and serenity in our lives and strengthen and mature and nurture our relationship with our higher power. It's a time we can be ourselves with our higher power and affirm that this God of our choosing is there for us. We can focus on our daily purpose, asking that our higher powers will be done in our lives and for the power to carry that out. Why doesn't Coda refer to God or our higher power as he or she? Many Coda members have spiritual beliefs that do not interpret God as masculine or feminine. Many people in our fellowship have been discriminated against or suffered physical, sexual, or verbal abuse from the males and females in their lives who were authority figures. Many people have experienced religious abuse in situations where God was referred to in a masculine sense. As a result, many Coda members have difficulty separating the messages, the shame, fear, and pain from their concept of God. To them, God has the personality of these abusive and or neglected individuals because they held the authority status. So it may be difficult to hear God referred to as he or she. Given the wide variety of people, cultures, countries, Coda chooses to extend respect to all people and their varied spiritual beliefs. In short, Coda simply refers to God as our higher power. Do I work the steps only one time? Throughout the recovery process, we work the steps many times. They're not meant to be a one-time fix. Our 12th step tells us to practice these principles in all our affairs, which is our guidance to work the steps every time we discover an area of our lives over which we're powerless. Each time we give someone the power to affect our well-being, the steps help us to regain our empowerment and learn from the situation. The steps are our guides to living and maintaining healthy lives. By following this guidance, we are given tools to use for a lifetime. What is 13th stepping? This term originated in several other 12-step programs to describe unhealthy and inappropriate sexual behaviors that take place within the fellowship. One person could be taking advantage of another when they're in a vulnerable or painful spot, or someone may be using a nurturing hug for sexual gratification. It could apply to sexual innuendos or sexual joking in order to control, embarrass, or subtly negotiate sexually with another. 13th stepping also occurs in meetings when members flirt, dress inappropriately, or attend just to find dates. In an attempt to approach the subject without shame and blame, because many people are unaware of these behaviors, some members of the fellowship make announcements or engage in discussions concerning 13th stepping and the potential damage it can cause. Whether we're engaging in inappropriate behaviors, receiving or witnessing them, we must all work together to create and maintain CODA meetings where the members can feel safe to be vulnerable, share their thoughts and feelings, and receive support for their recovery without manipulation or control. What does childhood have to do with our lives today? The habits and beliefs of a lifetime, from how often we brush our teeth to ideas about God, country, and our place in the world, are established in childhood. As we continue our recovery work in CODA, we find many of the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of childhood are present in our adult lives. Until we consciously examine each, we may unconsciously continue these habits and adhere to the beliefs we learned as children. The CODA Welcome states that codependence is a most deeply rooted compulsive behavior, and that it is born out of our sometimes moderately, sometimes extremely dysfunctional family systems. The roots referred to in the phrase deeply rooted compulsive behaviors can often be uncovered and traced to the experiences of childhood. More important, the way we interpreted these experiences and the coping devices we created to overcome our distress allowed us to survive or even thrive. We continued to use and perfect these methods of coping until they became unconscious parts of ourselves. In our current relationships with others, we tend to repeat our dysfunctional patterns of the past. As adults, especially when our lives become difficult, we often revert to the old familiar behaviors to deal with current feelings and situations rather than question our long-held beliefs. For example, if as children we experienced a raging parent, as adults we may experience fear of anger, our own or others. Rather than express ourselves directly or honestly, we may go to great lengths to avoid confrontation. Conversely, if we identify with the aggressor, we may become argumentative and controlling. Codependence is about extremes. If as children we were emotionally or physically neglected, we may find ourselves attracted to people who are consistently preoccupied, absent, or emotionally unavailable. Or we may perpetuate the abuse cycle through our own actions or inactions. If as children we were physically abused, as adults we may become attracted to insecure, aggressive partners because their behaviors are familiar, reminding us of one or more of our caregivers. Or we may justify and imitate their behavior, using physical force in our attempts to control others. If as children we were emotionally abused, we may verbally abuse our partners, or we may choose partners who emotionally abuse us. If as children we were sexually abused, we may have learned to use our sexuality in a manipulative way to get what we wanted, or we may be indiscriminate in our sexual relations because we confuse sex with love. We may not feel able to refuse sex, or we may avoid sexual situations entirely. If as children we were expected to be perfect, we may continue this illusion and rarely, if ever, feel satisfied with our own or others' performances, looks, and or accomplishments. We answer the step 1 question in chapter 3 to begin understanding how our powerlessness developed in childhood. Working the first step helps us to gain an awareness of the effect our behaviors have had on our lives. We admitted we were powerless over others, that our lives had become unmanageable. As adults, continually focusing on our recovery, we work the 4th step, which helps us to further identify and admit to these behaviors as we take a long, hard look at ourselves. Deeply buried feelings begin to surface, bringing about the awareness that at times we have acted as a victim or victimizer due to our childhood experiences. Searching for clarity and becoming more aware of the adverse effects of our childhood behavioral patterns, we seek help. We use the tools of the program. Example, we call our sponsor, attend and share at meetings, keep a journal, and seek out supportive CODA members or friends. Most importantly, we rely on our higher power for guidance. Our recovery work helps us move forward in our healing process and release the powerful hold of the past. What is the child within? The child within is the sum of all of our childhood experiences, memories, perceptions, beliefs, and emotions. It is the part of us that, number 1, experienced both the positive and negative aspects of childhood. Number 2, retains the unexpressed feelings generated by our childhood experiences. And number 3, reacts strongly, either passively or rebelliously, to the difficult situations we encounter in our adult lives. The child within, or our inner child, is that part of us that carries the innocence of life, curiosity of nature, and the spirit of who we are. Our inner child can be delightful, spontaneous, creative, playful, joyful, mischievous, tender, and loving. It may also appear as the hurt, embittered, shamed, scared, or angry part of us. When unsettling feelings connected with the past are triggered, The child within often reacts impulsively, immaturely, or aggressively. Our unresolved issues erupt as overwhelming thoughts and or feelings that drive our behaviors, often leaving us wondering, why did I act like that? Or where did that come from? For example, if criticized by someone, we may overreact in anger or we may be passive. We might go into a shame spiral without realizing that we are actually reacting to a similar event from childhood when we were shamed or criticized. A minor loss may bring on bouts of uncontrollable crying and subsequent depression, which actually relates back to unexpressed grief from childhood. For instance, if as a child we experienced the death of a loved one but were told not to cry, the solution lies not with trying to eradicate the child within, but by embracing this often unpredictable, sometimes unwelcome part of ourselves. With help from our higher power, as we experience and accept our inner child, we are able to heal our pain from the past and discover our authentic selves. Learning to accept and love ourselves is a gift we give ourselves, allowing us to live healthier, happier lives. We are able to experience what it means to love and to be loved. Recovery work is vital if we want to free ourselves from our all-consuming fears and resentments of the past. Attending meetings, following others' examples, learning to have fun, journal writing, and seeking professional assistance, if necessary, are some of the ways we use to connect with the precious little child within. What is meant by parenting ourselves? Parenting or reparenting ourselves means recognizing we are capable human beings who are choosing to become fully functioning, emotionally healthy adults. Growing up in dysfunctional families left us with many unmet needs, and we may not have felt valued or loved by our parents. As adults in recovery, we become aware of our childhood wounds, and we have the opportunity to fill these childhood voids. We learn to take care of ourselves by honoring and setting limits with our inner child. We use our recovery tools to nurture ourselves, develop healthy boundaries, and become accountable for our actions. As we come to love ourselves, we are capable of loving others and accepting love in return. We place our faith in a higher power and ask for help in addressing the fears, hurts, shame, and anger of the child within. Parenting ourselves means reflecting on and responding to situations rather than reacting. It means practicing acceptance and asking for what we want and need in relationships. We strive to let go of self-shame and blame and take responsibility for ourselves, our happiness, and our sorrow. As we become more able to take care of ourselves, we discover how to stop expecting others to fulfill our basic needs. Healthy parenting self-talk is filled with honesty, strength, understanding, compassion, and wisdom. If we make a mistake, our parent self or inner parent refrains from making self-shaming statements. Instead, we address the mistake with a compassionate inner dialogue such as, I know I made a mistake. I feel sad and guilty about it, but I'm human. Sometimes I make mistakes. We nurture ourselves with loving behaviors and thoughts. Learning to parent ourselves is a continuous process requiring a variety of teachers. Observing and listening to healthy mothers and fathers talk to their children provides models of good parenting skills. For those of us who were shamed by our parents, we discover we can reparent our inner child with a nurturing inner parent we choose to create for ourselves. We let go of negative shame-based beliefs and reparent ourselves with affirmations and permissions that help us recover from childhood wounds. Recovery allows us to be our authentic selves. We can read books that cover parenting, assertiveness, training, affirmations, and building self-esteem. Sponsors and CODA friends may share with us their own self-parenting journey. Such examples can help us learn about loving behaviors and dialogue between our inner parent and inner child. Along with the wisdom, love, and accountability found in our 12 steps and 12 traditions, a loving higher power is our greatest teacher. What are boundaries? A boundary is a limit or border for in CODA. Boundaries relate to imaginary borders that surround each individual body, spirit, energy, behaviors, thoughts, and emotions. We set boundaries to help ensure our personal safety, comfort, and self-respect. If our boundaries are violated by ourselves or others, we experience various feelings of discomfort. Thus, we use our boundaries to care for ourselves and to be respectful of others. We distinguish between external and internal boundaries. External boundaries focus on physical and sexual aspects. Internal boundaries concentrate on protecting our emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. If our boundaries are intact and functional, then we can say, I know where I stop and where you begin. I know what is my business and what is none of my business. I know the difference between my emotions and others' emotions. I recognize what is and is not my responsibility, and I am aware of what is and is not comfortable or safe for me. An example of a physical external boundary is a personal comfort zone, the distance of space that feels comfortable between two people. If we do not know a person, we might not feel safe if the person gets too close, tries to hug us, or physically touches us. When we close or lock a door for privacy or tell someone we do not want a hug, we are setting a physical boundary so we can feel safe. Our physical boundary, comfort zone, can also be flexible. It can vary for different relationships, and it can change within a relationship because of circumstances. We are all unique, and only we can determine what physical boundaries feel safe and appropriate for us. We are also responsible for and have the right to determine our sexual boundaries. As stated in the Newcomer's Handbook, healthy and safe sexual boundaries are recommended from the very beginning in CODA. It is not wise to begin new sexual or love relationships when first attending CODA. Anesthetizing the pain of failed codependent relationships by immediately beginning a new relationship is a part of the disease. Staying out of new sexual relationships is a good stopgap to end the dysfunctional behavior long enough to figure out what is going on inside. Some of us may have experienced sexual abuse at some time during our lives and may not recognize healthy sexual boundaries. In recovery, we take our time getting to know our true selves and determining what is safe and comfortable for ourselves. We also take time to know a potential partner before deciding if it is appropriate to be sexual with that person. Even if we have previously been sexual with someone, we have the prerogative to say no to additional sexual encounters. No one has the right to be sexual with us without our permission. We do not have to engage in any type of sexual activity that feels unsafe, inappropriate, or uncomfortable. We always have the right to say no or tell someone to stop at any time before or during sexual activity. Our internal boundaries define and contain the unique personal characteristics of our thoughts, feelings, opinions, behaviors, beliefs, and spirituality. Boundaries help us recognize, honor, and respect our individual wants, needs, and desires. They help us define our separateness and give us safety in our intimate communications with others. If someone verbally attacks us, we maintain our internal boundaries and practice self-containment by moderately expressing our thoughts and feelings about their behavior using I statements. Or we may choose not to respond and silently remind ourselves that how another person acts is about that person, not about us. If someone confronts us about our behavior, we use our internal boundaries to listen to what they say. We do not internalize what is said before deciding if any of it rings true for us. If we have wronged the other person, we make amends by in either situation. Our self-worth is not diminished because we have maintained our internal boundaries. We use internal boundaries in various ways. An example is deciding how much personal information, such as personal history or financial information, to share with others. Conversely, we refrain from delving into others' personal business. We might really want to ask a question or say something to someone, yet we do not because we know that person's private life is none of our business. When we have healthy internal boundaries and systems, we recognize that each individual is responsible for his or her emotional, mental, or spiritual boundaries. We allow ourselves and others to have their own thoughts, feelings, opinions, behaviors, beliefs, and spirituality. With functional boundaries, we are able to meet our needs without infringing on others' abilities to meet their needs. Our internal boundaries can be flexible, and we decide what is safe and comfortable for ourselves. We are the only ones who can engage our own boundaries. We cannot expect others to recognize and respect them if they do not know about them. It is our responsibility to communicate our boundaries to others in a gentle and firm way, remembering that if someone hasn't dealt with their own lack of boundaries, they probably will not recognize boundaries in others. If we encounter a perpetrator or major offender who does not respect our boundaries, then it might be necessary to create a wall between us and that person for our personal safety. Conversely, some of us may avoid forming healthy and loving relationships by shutting ourselves off from authentic interactions with others. We may believe we have created boundaries when we have actually created walls that impede our ability to have healthy relationships. Creating healthy boundaries is essential for our recovery. We learn this by attending meetings, socializing after meetings, talking with our sponsor, working the steps, and participating in service work, and with the guidance we receive from our higher power, and with our higher power, we create healthy boundaries for ourselves and learn to respect others' boundaries. We are then able to form and sustain healthy and loving relationships with ourselves and others. What is enmeshment? Enmeshment occurs in relationships between people who have not developed their own clear identities or boundaries. Each person's sense of wholeness and self-worth is intertwined with those of other persons. It is as if there were only one identity, and it is difficult for either to function fully without the other. When we look to another person to define our values, and we accept their needs, feelings, or opinions as our own, we are enmeshed. Statements of enmeshment such as, "I'd die without you," "You're my everything," "Without you, I'm nothing," "I need you," or "You make me whole," are found in everyday conversations. Enmeshment is common among family members, lovers, friends, and in caretaking situations. An enmeshed relationship doesn't allow for individuality, autonomy, wholeness, or personal empowerment. Healthy relationships with ourselves, others, and with our higher power are hindered by enmeshment because our focus is most often outward towards someone else. The antidote for enmeshment is developing healthy boundaries, keeping the focus on ourselves, and working to define our unique identities, wants, needs, and opinions. Maintaining a relationship with our higher power, participating in CODA meetings, and using the 12 steps and 12 traditions in our relationship with others all help us to let go of our enmeshment behaviors and become our authentic selves. What is detachment? Detachment is the act of disengaging or disconnecting from another person, group of people, or situation. Detaching allows us to emotionally and or physically separate ourselves from people, events, and places in order to gain a healthy, objective point of view. If we don't like the behavior of others, we can detach, recognizing that we are separate from them with our own distinct identity and set of boundaries. We endeavor to detach with love and respect for ourselves and others, especially when detaching from family or friends. We ask our higher power to help us focus on maintaining our boundaries, even though we we remember that we are not responsible for other people's behaviors, nor are they responsible for our well-being. What is the difference between detachment and avoidance? Another way of stating this could be, what is the difference between letting go and running away? In Coda, detachment is a conscious act of self-care. We choose to disengage emotionally from people and or leave situations that could harm us. Avoidance is often an unconscious, dysfunctional coping mechanism that allows us to avoid self-accountability, ignore people or situations, hide from the truth, or run away from our responsibilities. Avoidance is often driven by our fear of experiencing rejection, anger, disappointment, abandonment, or shame. Simply put, detachment is an action based on love and strength, while avoidance is based on fear. Am I recovered from codependence? We can become very disappointed if we believe we can stop all of our codependent behaviors. Our program reminds us to show up, work our recovery process, and turn the results over to God. When we do this, we release perfectionism. We can experience the hope and miracles of recovery, a life progressively filled with serenity, acceptance, and love. What is codependent slip? Dictionaries tell us that the word slip means to stumble, fall, make an error or mistake. When we apply that to our codependence, we find the same meaning. We momentarily return to using codependent behaviors to deal with interactions or life circumstances. A codependent slip is also called backsliding. We remember there's not complete abstinence in our recovery. We're human and make mistakes. How we deal with those mistakes is what's more important. Our 10th step helps us to address this. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. We also try to remember that our mistakes help us to determine what aspects of our recovery we should work on and ask our higher power for help. If we continue to slip, we may consider reworking the steps on that issue. This will enable us to reach a deeper level of healing and understanding about the problem and work toward healthier behaviors. We've also found it helpful to avoid shaming or punishing ourselves for our slips, remembering that shame is a large part of codependence. We find we only fuel the fire when we add self-shaming and punishment to our mistakes. Forgiveness, love, and perseverance from our self-parent are the keys to reworking our codependent slips.